Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
First of all, you need 4 really solid teammates, and you need a very strong camaraderie between those 4 teammates, because all of them will be challenged from start to finish. And if all 4 are feeling great from start to finish, they will not win the race.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
I need you, brother. Please, Sensei. Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. Courage. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Hey. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you.
Say the word, Chef.
Whatever.
Hey Dark Zone listeners, it's Wayne Leake from Canada's Wilderness Traverse Adventure Race. September 25th to 27th, 2026, we are bringing the classic Canadian wilderness race back to Dorset, Ontario, a favorite host site less than 3 hours from Toronto. We've got an all-new course and includes Algonquin Park, Canada's first provincial park. Big thanks to the Dark Zone's Brian Gatens for sharing this, and we're thrilled he's returning north this September as part of our coverage team. Earn your ARWS North America rankings points, and there's no conflict with USRA Nationals this year, and we'd love to welcome you north. Expect epic, untouched wilderness, off-trail treks demanding dialed-in nav, and canoe legs that will test you with spectacular paddling and punishing portages. Are you ready for Wilderness Traverse? Join Brian and the rest of us this September 25th to 27th. Get the details and secure your team spot now at wildernesstraverse.com. That's wildernesstraverse.com.
All right, folks, Brian Gatens here from the Dark Zone. We dive right into conversations sometimes, and this is one of them. Lars Bukkehave, friend from Denmark, has joined us to talk about the upcoming Adventure Racing World Series European Championships. When you were listening to this, we are dropping this the few days before the race, full race conversation here. The racers just got the route book, and Lars is here to talk about the race that he has put on. A lot to talk about, a lot to go over. So Lars, welcome back to the Dark Zone. We've had you here before. It's great to have you back on the show. Tell us about this monster of a race that you've put together for Denmark.
First of all, Brian, thank you so much. And thanks for having me again. And also thanks for me and my girlfriend, Maria Winter, to have the opportunity to host a European Championship in Denmark. So it's not only for the Danish people. We are having 50 teams coming in from 17 different countries around Europe. And then we have one overseas from United States of America taking the time to come to Denmark and do a 48-hour race. So it has been a long process in the making. I started adventure racing 22 years ago. And in some sense, this is also the culmination of 22 years involvement in the race. I started racing there, and then a few years later, I figured out that this sport wouldn't exist without passionate souls that also organized races. So 18 years ago, I started to organize smaller 10, 12-hour events in Denmark, and that race has slowly grown into being a European series for the ARWS. And for the last 5 years, we have been a part of the series with that goal in mind that we someday would grow and develop and get all the skills to one day host the European Championship. And that day is about to be ready.
That's going to be exciting for you. You mentioned over 2 decades of adventure racing, races all over the globe. I think you've raced on every continent they offer a race you've probably raced on, correct? Am I right about that?
Exactly, yeah.
So
North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Oceania.
So we have to add an Antarctica adventure racing because you can get all 7 continents. And so clearly you bring a huge depth of experience. And you and I just saw each other a few months ago. We were together at the Endless Mountains Adventure Race. How did your team do with that race?
We really enjoyed that race, and it's Endless Mountain is one of those races that I really enjoy, come and race, because it's not only a great area and beautiful scenery, but it's also what Brad and Abby and all the volunteers are creating, and the whole organization from Rootstock is an amazing, challenging course from an orienteering and navigation perspective, but also from a team challenge and all the stages and the way that have put the race together.
It was a great experience. I've been involved in the early editions as a volunteer helping to organize it. I had a chance to race it, and it was great seeing you. We passed on the course a couple times. What was your team's final standing? Where did you end up on the overall?
So this race, we ended up winning and being the only team that cleared the entire course. And we were also a little bit surprised or taking down with the pants down, because it said that we could finish, the winning team would finish on a Saturday afternoon. But Saturday afternoon, we still had a lot of the course to clear.
A lot of us were in that same boat. It wasn't just you guys.
Exactly. So I think everybody was challenged to the bone. And at the end, it's one of the classic thing in adventure race. You are not racing other teams, but you're actually racing the course.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
At the end of the day, we were basically racing the cutoff time. And I think we came in with 25 minutes to go before they were start to take off checkpoints.
We pulled in there right in front of you. We were only 30 minutes ahead of you. Now, we were 19th, mind you. We were exactly mid-pack, 19th out of 38. You guys were 1 out of 38. And that was a fantastic race. Congratulations on winning that race. And it's nice to see your ongoing success. As you take a recent Mountains race, if you take other races you've done, it sounds like all of that experience comes together when you put a race course together. Talk to us a bit about your logic, your thinking behind designing a course.
Exactly, Brian. And I think adventure racing is, of course, a sport, and it's something you can be good at. But also, to be honest, it's also an active vacation. And people are traveling around the world and see unique, special places. And I think forest is forest, mountains are mountains, but what makes the places and the races unique are the culture, the people, and also the history and the whole photography of the entire region. And that is some of the things that I really have tried to put into the European Championship. Not only is it interesting maps and interesting navigation challenges and interesting disciplines and all that, but I also have tried to put in as much Danish history, culture, and also social interaction between the teams before the race and after the race. And one thing that some races do, and when they do it, I really enjoy it, is first of all, we have organized that all participants are going to live at the same hotel. So we have booked the entire hotel, and people are coming in on a Thursday, and all of them are doing a skill test and a registration. And during this skill test and registration, all the teams will have a time slot, and they will shuffle around and meet new friends and old friends and chat a little bit about the upcoming race, but also other races where they have raced together, neck and neck, or war stories from old races.
You're bringing up an interesting dynamic in adventure racing, which is especially poignant going into this conversation, because when we have these races we get together, whether it be a day race, 24 hours, 48 or days at a time, it's interesting how it becomes it's partially a reunion of friends and family, and it's a race. And I bring that up because over on Netflix, now this is the summer of 2026, over on Netflix in America, Arthur the King, which is a movie that I know, is having a huge resurgence. There's some sort of late summer interest, and a lot of folks are catching Arthur the King. And a lot of folks will be coming to the Dark Zone after watching that and then picking up the podcast. So I like the fact, and thank you for doing that you led with talking about the community aspect of the race first. Yes, it's a competitive aspect, but also you mentioned the community aspect, because that's what really draws us to adventure racing. And it sounds like that's what you're trying to foster inside this race.
Exactly. And I think all races that I have done in the past, I really like, but I think the races that really puts down a social community before and after the race, I really appreciate. And that's also one of the elements when I said, okay, we're going to put a lot of teams from all over Europe in. And it's kind of a family reunion, as you say. It's the family plus, as we call it. Mm-hmm. So I have met you, Brian, around the world, multiple places, and it's always fun. And here we are sitting, talking across different time zones, but we have something in common. We have been in the forest in the middle of the night, both falling asleep, and we pushed through. And we have been in Vermont, we have been in Pennsylvania, we have been all over the place. And two persons that are both doing adventure race, they have very easily to start a conversation, even though they don't know each other. And that camaraderie and friendship, I really want to help put on during the event. Yeah, and then we have this registration and skill test on the Thursday. And one of the registration skill tests, of course, like top rope climbing, belay, ascending, rappelling, swim test and all that. But we also actually have a social checkpoint where there is a bonfire and they need to make a bread on a stick. And it's a stick bread, and that's a Danish tradition. All Danish people know it, and they have done it as a kid. They do a stick bread, and we want all the racers from all over Europe to see this Danish tradition and do a stick bread. And yeah, there they can all sit around the bonfire for 10, 15 minutes and chat with the teams that are doing the same activity at the same time. And just forget the competition for a short while, and then afterward, they will go back to the gearboxes and stuff like that. So that's the whole Thursday on the hotel. And then, of course, we end up with a big social dinner before the race. And a lot of races has this, and this is already setting the tone. We are still friends and we are still on the same team. Yep. Tomorrow we are racing against each other, but we can still share stories. And we, of course, end this up with a award-winning Danish ice company that have sponsored ice waffles, Hans's to all participants. So getting a little glimpse of Denmark, but also taste a little bit of Denmark before the race.
Your desire to build a social aspect to it, and you mentioned adventure racing has that. Is that a large part of Danish culture? When other sports take place and other events are going on, is the same lean into community prior to competition common, or is this specific to your view of adventure racing?
When I started racing in Denmark 22 years ago, there was a joke that we always have the after party at McDonald's on the way back from the race. Nobody really enjoyed eating McDonald's right after a race, but it was convenient and people were tired and just wanted some food. Then in a very backbone Danish race, 2 til lands til vands and i luften, people were after that race meeting at McDonald's. And then one year I asked the organizer, I know you as chef, could you make a social dinner at the award ceremony? And he said, yeah, it would be some of the easiest thing that I can do. And this race afterwards was famous because of having the social dinner after the race. And then a couple of years later, when we formed the Danish Federation, ARWS, in Denmark, we actually put it as a requirement to host a Danish race in the cup, that you needed a social dinner after the race as part of the race fee and part of the whole thing that the sport need to involve. And ever since, all Danish races have more or less have a social dinner in some sort. And it really bonds the Danish team closely together. So even though we are multiple teams racing against each other, we also often mix match across, and this makes a really strong community.
We saw that at the World Championships this past year, there was a combined Danish team that raced together.
Exactly.
Yeah, at ARWS Montane, they were a wonderful team. They represented Denmark very well. They were a lot of fun on the course. They were also really good interviews. So that's another tradition that you have in Denmark. That's how strong they are with the media. So you have the Thursday, you have the skills test, a lot of skills tests. You have the social dinner, and then we get into the racing. And this is a big race.
And also why we want to have the skill test before is because when the gun goes off, it's a true expedition or it's a true race. There is no climbing instructor standing and telling you how to clip in, to tie your harness or lock your carabiner. The team is in charge of it themselves. So when they come to a rappelling section, there is some harnesses. There is, of course, an instructor that watch out of the eyes, but the team is in charge by themselves to put on the harness, tie them into the rope, do their prosec as a backup, and then rappel down the rope.
Right.
So it's a true expedition and really skill required race.
The schematic looks like it could be for a 5-day race, not a 48-hour race. It sounds like to me, it looks like to me as I look at it now, that you have an incredible amount of skills built into the race. Obviously, the skills test backs that up, but I'm looking at, we have caving, coasteering, we have climbing, we have a run and a swim, we have a dive. Curious what that is, the dive. You have the canoe with bikes, mountain biking, you have more climbing, you have an orienteering run, a team challenge, and then another mountain bike and another dive and another kayak, 19 stages, 11 transition areas, 147 checkpoints. Holy cow.
36 hours.
In 36 hours.
So I think actually you're right with all these things. One thing I would mention that people often don't mention is the transition. I think this race will be won by the team that is most efficient in transition area, because there are so many transitions that they need to do, and they need to adjust for the new discipline so much that they are challenged all the time. There is no time for breaks. And there are
with such a tight race time frame, 11 transitions, if you waste 5 minutes for a transition, you've lost an hour of race time.
Exactly. And that's too difficult with the top teams to run or bike that distance faster or take that time.
Right.
But I also built a race that all stages apart. It's a race or a stage that I would do on a Sunday where I have no plans. Just go out with my buddies and train or do that stage. And each stage would be a beautiful Sunday in itself.
Got it.
So the mountain bike rides are nice. The kayaks are nice. All the stages are nice in itself. And combined, I think it will be a great challenge.
I noticed that there's an underwater checkpoint.
Exactly. So we have diving as one of the disciplines. And it was actually inspired from when I organized the Danish Championship. We had a kayak stage where there was a sunken ship during that kayak stage. And I did the kayak stage. And when I paddled over the sunken ship, I could actually see it underneath. And then I looked at my friend that was checking it out with me, and we said, let's go on land and put the kayaks in and swim out and check that ship out. And we did that, and then we actually dived down to the ship. We brought snorkels and fins and mask, and then we could actually see a couple of attachment points to that ship. And then we actually went home and searched online, and we actually found a picture of that ship. And therefore, we put that into through the map. And for that reason, we could actually put 3 underwater checkpoints on that ship. So during that stage, they had to dive down. And ever since, it challenged all the team massively. No Danish team that did that race was ready for this challenge. And they actually lost a lot of time. The team that we talked about in the past, Masanka, was actually leading this race with 1 hour. And they lost 45 minutes on this diving stage and almost lost the entire race on this single stage in itself. Afterwards, they do what Masanka always does. They go out and train their weakest discipline. So a couple of weeks after, I got a message with them on the beach with fins, masks, snorkels, was training diving. So one thing is for sure, they are ready for the European Championship when I put diving back in.
They're prepared for that. And it's funny, a large part of race directing is dispelling myths about the area. And tell us a bit about Denmark topographically, right? As a country, Denmark is based on their maps. And Denmark in reality, is it flat? Is it wide open? Or will people be surprised by what they come across?
So actually, a Danish orienteering run could be more hilly than an orienteering run in the Alps. Or Norway, example, because Denmark is a lot of up and down. So a 10K orienteering run in Denmark could actually have 300 height meters, or what you call 1,000 feet.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Because it's a lot of up and down. But if you are, example, a orienteering run in the Alps or Norway, for example, you couldn't do 1,000 feet in one go.
Right.
Because it hillsides. So if you are doing an orienteering run in Norway, it's mostly hillsides because there is no flat sections or ups and downs. it's a mountain hillside. So therefore you couldn't do that. It's more traversing, or it's more a little bit down, and you start up high and then you are running downhill. So actually this course has some height meters. Of course it can compete with other race courses, which is in really mountainous areas, but there are a lot of hills over the course.
But I'll tell you something interesting. I was talking to a race director last week. We were chatting about America and American adventure racing and how there's a lot of challenges out west for us because of it's federal land, it's government land. And they have a very hard time putting together race courses out there because your mountains are so big and they're so vast that you can't really move a lot off the trails because the terrain gets very steep. It gets unsafe very quickly. And some race directors have solved that problem effectively, but overall, it sounds to me like in Denmark, with the lower hills, if you will, not that they're non-existent, you have a lot more choice when it comes to a route because so much of it is coverable by foot. Am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly. And also, the government also owns a lot of the forest and stuff like that. So I got permission for that. But in general, I also wanted, when I make this race course with no comparisons, or I wanted the best race course as possible. So I first drew the lines on the map and said, okay, I want to show this part. I want to show this part. And then afterwards, I thought about permissions. And then I just made a huge Excel document, and thanks to my girlfriend, Maria Rinder, that is also helping. She is a mastermind in logistics, and she is a really mastermind in making systems how to check this off. Because we ended up that for this race course, we needed 108 permissions.
Then you sit now, is that a combination of local towns and cities, private landowners, and the government?
Museums, like UNESCO places, a combination of everything. And at the end of the day, we secured 104 of those 108 permissions. So only 4 places where we wanted to do the course, we couldn't. And at the end of the day, it was only really small changes we needed to do, and it didn't really make any difference to the course. So we then just started emailing people and called them or put up a meeting. And then we also had some of the local authorities help us to invite maybe 40 landowners or 30 landowners or 10 landowners in that area. And then had all of them sit around the table at the same time. And then when first one landowner is convinced and says, of course, this is a no-brainer, you should trespass our land because this is a great story and it's people coming from all over Europe. And of course, we want to showcase the best of Denmark. We cannot be a stopper for that. Then it's hard for the 9 others to say, no, you can't trespass my land.
Right.
Because I'm like at DICK.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, you don't want to be the landowner who is just being a jerk to be a jerk, right? And if everyone else is going along with it, off they go. For the folks, for the very small group that said no, you have a 98% success rate. What were the no's? Why is it? Because it was UNESCO? Because it was a fragile site? Was it safe? I'm curious. With such a huge yes rate, what were the no's based upon?
So there was one landowner that had said no for 450 years. Like generations back. So this is their own hunting place. And it was a place where the king, all the way back to Frederick III in 1200s or something, like way back, they had this area for hunting and there was no people trespassing. So that was some. And there is actually a funny story about the system about putting 10 people together in the same room. There was a place where the mayor of the area actually was present because he thought it was interesting. And then there was one landowner that said, no, it's really not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. And this would really offend my land and so on. And then the mayor actually said, if you really think this, I think you should move to another county of Denmark, because if you are saying no to this, this is not the place in Denmark where you should live. So there was a pressure within, and I'm not saying any names, I'm not saying any places, but this was a conversation that I overheard from some landowners.
So it sounds like you got the race that you wanted, right? It sounds like with all those permissions and all the planning you did, It worked out the way you wanted it to. What do you think, based upon the complexity of the course, the amount of time that has to be covered, so much distance in such a short period of time, the team that ends up being successful, the team that comes at the top, what will they have done properly along the way?
First of all, you need 4 really solid teammates, and you need a very strong camaraderie between those 4 teammates, because all of them will be challenged from start to finish. And if all 4 are feeling great from start to finish, they will not win the race. I remember overhearing a conversation with Martin Flinter from the Swedish team Thule in China. And he told me 15 years ago when we were racing stage races in China, he said, if all 4 team members are feeling great, you are moving too slow. At least one person has to be a little bit in pain, else you're moving too slow. And I think this course will definitely be one of those courses where you need to have a fast pace from start to finish. And all 4 team members need to really work solid together.
That's a really interesting point, Lars. I've never heard that before. The idea that if everybody feels good all the time, you're clearly not going fast enough. There should be some suffering going on, and there should be some sharing of gear. Because that's a very common thing too. And this is also for the newer racer. It's not uncommon for other people to carry each other's backpacks and gear.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. In Endless, I think one of the stages we went out with 3 backpacks because we knew that there would be not 4 racers carrying a backpack each. We knew that one person will be a little bit in pain or needed to recover from other stages. That person need a little bit extra. Or the navigator, that is the main navigator, would need a little bit break to focus more on the map.
Right.
And talking about the navigator, I think that's the next important skill, is that a successful team can't only have one navigator, because this is really challenging orienteering and navigation from start to finish. As you mentioned, it's 167 checkpoints within 36 hours. Some of it is on big 1 to 25,000 maps, but there is also a lot of orienteering maps along the way with the ARWS, International Orienteering Federation standard of maps that are totally updated in 1 to 5,000 or 1 to 10,000, where it's really required a really strong orienteering skill. And I don't think a team only can have one person looking at that map all the time, because some of it is also a bit complex maps, so you really need to work together. One of the big questions I have from a lot of teams is that we are surprised you don't provide 2 race maps. And in my 22 years of racing, I mostly never use 2 maps in a team at the same times. The races that have provided 2 maps, we often have one of the sets in the backpack as a backup. Because when you have 2 navigators, it's so much solider, in my perspective, to stand shoulder to shoulder and point and talk about the maps on the same map instead of trying to explain small details. Oh, we are at that stone over here. We're going to take trail heading north-northeast and so on. And it's very easy to confuse or so on. And it's also easy that both of them are navigating at the same time and pulling a little bit in 2 different directions. So it's very easy to say that the person with the map in the hand are the main navigator, and the other person next to him is the backup and only coming in with comments, and also coming in with if he's going totally wrong. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you go left or right around a tree. It's more personal preference, or if you cross the river here or 10 meters more to the left. It just slows the team down if you have to discuss every small detail. So in that sense, it's more, in my perspective, more solid to have one man in front with the map, and then a backup navigator that is going shoulder to shoulder or tapping in, doing map memory, and follow the race. So in my mind, I never thought about the need for 2 maps because I never used it. But of course, in the future, if there is the demand for 2 maps, we can look into it. But for this race, we never thought it was a thing. But coming back to your point, I think 2 or 3 really solid navigators is what the team needs.
I think you make a really valid point about the idea of the teammate having 2 sets of maps. And to your point, like even Endless Mountains, we had 2 sets of maps. One set of maps, after we looked at them initially, we just packed up and put in the back of a backpack, and we're there in case we lost a map. And we also had if you were in the beginning of that race, we came off that first 5-mile trek and we were in that restaurant bar going through all of our maps. Our team actually mixed the maps up. Like who had this, who has that one, and you didn't know where it was. And to your point, in the busyness and the frenetic nature and moving quickly, having a second set of maps, while it might feel beneficial, could really be a logistical challenge in planning. But you make a really valid point about the team dynamic of the navigators, whoever he or she may be, standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at the same map at the same time, really speeds up that process, opposed to, I see this, no, I see this. It's one map together. I've never heard that point before, so I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and this is also going back to my own team, Bend Racing, and when we raced Endless, to your point, we was actually 4 people involved with the navigation and decision-making and stuff like that. So Karen is actually the strongest in our team to do pace counting, and she also have a compass. And from time to time, we say, okay, Karen, it's 300 meters, start counting. And then she comes 100 meters, and then she's silent, and then she comes 200 meters. And then either the guy in the front that are navigating start to tune in, and the other people are start to look at checkpoints or look at the feature where we are turning or anything like that. So my valid point is that a team don't have one navigator. It's a task that they share between the teams. Or a team can swap around, and one are doing navigation on foot, another one are doing it on bikes, and a third are doing it in kayaks, because those 3 disciplines are also 3 different ways of navigating, because it requires different tools, different styles, and stuff like that. So
yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, and I also found too, another strategy that's effective is paying every single time of attention to the map is mentally very hard, right? Because you're always into it. It's know when we're moving in this direction now. I've seen teams do this, that when you're moving, someone says green, we're just moving in that direction. Yellow means the navigator thinks they're getting closer to the checkpoint, and red means we should be on top of it. And so it acts as a cue for the team, like, because if you're a guy like me, if I'm holding a map, we got a big problem, right? So for a guy like me who's behind everybody, carrying gear, helping out that way, helping with logistics, are you eating and things like that? I need to know when I need to pay attention, because you might find that the navigator shouldn't be the only person looking for the checkpoint. At this point, it's like, okay, we're here now. I would separate a little bit, spread out, look for it, things like that. And so I think you make a valid point. It's really good for the navigator to activate in the teammates when they need to begin to pay attention.
Yeah. No, it's fun you use green, yellow, and red. And to my understanding, you did it exactly opposite of what the first lesson you do in navigation or orienteering is. Also, you call it the traffic light.
Right.
Red, yellow, and green. Green is go. You can start the car and you can do full blast and go. And that's when you are on track. You know exactly where you are. You know exactly where you're going. You can run. Yellow is if you're not 100% sure where you are, you slow down. You start to pay more attention to features around you. And red is if you're a little bit lost, you completely stop. You stop, you don't start to run more in the wrong direction. You stop up, figure out where you are, or actually turn around and run back to where you knew where you were and start over again. So that's the normal red, yellow, and green that I'm used to. But I love your idea and also the way to communicate. And to your point, Brian, there is not one way to do it. And that's also why we two can talk from now to Christmas Eve about this amazing sport and all the small niche stuff. And I'm sure we can have just one talk about orienteering or maps or anything like that. But to your point, this navigation is a really key aspect of the race. Another key aspect of the race is actually knowing all the disciplines, because there are so many. And sometimes there is not a big difference in the running speed or the navigation speed between two top teams. There's not that big of a difference in biking speed. Most teams also know kayaking. Canoe is a little oddball in Europe because people mostly like kayaking, and therefore we also give people canoe paddles for the canoe. So they need to know the J-stroke, how to steer the canoe in the back. And also to mix it a little bit up, we want bikes inside the canoe. Most of all, to help my brother that is in charge of all the big logistics, so he don't need to do a bike transport, but also to challenge the teams as well to figure out a system quickly to put the bikes into the canoes, but also put the bikes in the manner not to destroy their bikes.
Right.
Because you can throw them in pretty quickly, and then when you take them out, your gear drop is bended.
Right.
So that's also a very key element for adventure racing, is taking care of your gear along the way, because your gear is valid. And if you break your derailleur, you will have to swap your bike into single speed, and then you have one engine lower to go on. So that valid point is also challenge them a little bit with the disciplines. And then, of course, we put in a lot of other skills, like diving, for example, is one discipline that really can shake up some of the teams that haven't trained them. And then we also put in a lot of climbing. Myself is a climbing instructor and spent most of the year teaching climbing and bringing people on climbing trips, climbing expeditions, and so on. But I see that climbing is really a discipline in adventure race that is mostly there for the pictures. It is rarely there for the skill of climbing in itself. It's mostly put in a top rope or putting and rappel with a top rope back up from an instructor or anything like that. So here I really wanted to challenge the team. And we put a big rappel where they have to navigate their way up to the start. And they're pretty high up and have to click themselves into the rope and rappel down. We have a couple of instructors up there just for safety, but it's the team themselves that are there to help each other. And that's also a teamwork, because you need to have your buddies after 12 hours of racing to check that your carabiners are locked. And there is always one person in the team that is more knowledgeable on the climbing than the others. And that person really needs to shine on that stage and really take care of his teammates that is probably or maybe afraid of heights or maybe don't trust the climbing equipment 100%. The teammate is there to nurse them and help and talk them through this challenge. Later in the race, we have a stage that we call vertical orienteering.
We'll go back to vertical orienteering in a second. I want to go back to stage 7. I see co-steering and caving. Tell us about the co-steering and the caving.
Exactly. Co-steering was a discipline that I was introduced to in ARWS XPD Portugal back in 2008. They had this beautiful co-steering stage, and it still remarks as top 20 of stages that I've ever done in a race around the world. And we followed this coastline, and we were climbing, we were very technical hiking, we were bouldering, we were swimming, and some places we were figuring out what way was the best way. Back then there was a couple of Danish teams that did this race, and then a place in Denmark called Montane, which has actually big sea cliffs. They did beautiful co-steering stages over there, and it was amazing. And then I found this place called Stevns Klint, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which has 25-kilometer unbroken sea cliffs. And beautiful. The reason why this place is a UNESCO World Heritage Site is it's one of the best places in the world to see this, what is called clay layer. And now we're diving into history, which is also one of the interesting parts of the race. It's a black clay layer that was actually from the asteroid impact 66 million years ago when the dinosaur eras ended. Mm-hmm. So the Earth was hit by asteroids, and there was a big dust cloud over the suns. which all the plants stopped to grow. And then, of course, all the dinosaurs died out because they have no food. And one of the best places on Earth to see this historical mark is actually on Stevns Klint, where we are doing this long co-steering sections. So as long as they're doing the co-steering, they will always have this beautiful white cliff on one side. And at some point, there is a black line all the way across that marking this area on Earth. So this co-steering stage was the first one that I said, this is the epicenter of the entire race. I have to plan everything around this because we have to have this stage during this adventure race.
Love that. I love that. That's just, and to your credit, a beautiful area, UNESCO World Heritage Site, tremendous history, and you're showing off your country. Right? So what a great way to approach that, as opposed to just picking a spot and running people through it. You put a lot of thought into why they're there and what they're going to see. How deep is the cave?
So at the end of this stage, they come actually to a Cold War bunker of Denmark. We had two. We were right in between the Warsaw Pact of Russia on one side and USA on the other side, NATO. We were a part of NATO, and Denmark was the first part of NATO if the Warsaw Pact would attack NATO. Mm-hmm. And this bunker was the first hit of attack. So we have this 4 kilometers of tunnels and caving underneath this sea cliff formed millions years ago. So this was one of the only places in Denmark where you could survive if there was a nuclear attack. So this was the place where the minister and the whole municipalities would hide out. So now it's, of course, a big museum, and it tells this story about another really historical part of Denmark's past, the Cold War. And we were the first point there. So they're going to do an underground orienteering stage of 3 kilometers with a lot of checkpoints. It's not hard orienteering, but when they come down there, they have to find one of the checkpoints is called Red Line. So if the Kremlin in Moscow wanted to call Pentagon in US, they actually called via Stevnsfortet. So they called up, and then there was a person in between that it could actually block that line. And that phone line is one of the checkpoints in this race.
That is so cool, Lars. That is so cool. That's a checkpoint during a race. Oh. I love that.
Yeah, and then there's, of course, an operational room where you have this, you always see in the movie, where there's a radar turning around.
Yep.
This is actually the predicted attack that the Polish 6 Marines, I think 6 or 7 Marine, would do on Stevnsfortet in Denmark. And then afterwards, some Russian troops will land other places. And they have all the red areas on that map, and then they have all the blue areas on the other side. And this operational room is also a checkpoint where they could see how Denmark and NATO was predicting how Warsaw Pact would attack this piece of land. Then they, of course, have a duty room with some beds. They have all this kind of different rooms. And then they also actually have a checkpoint of some of the Polish soldiers that actually tried to come close to this bunker. And they placed a mark. All soldiers have a mark on the hat that tells brigade and so on.
Yes.
And they actually swim up to the fort and place that brick on the clay. And that brick is still there. So that is one checkpoint. And to end this story off, one of our volunteers is, of course, an orienteering run. And during the Cold War, he actually served in the Danish military as an airborne marine, as you would call it. In Denmark, we call it Jægerkorpset. And he was a Jægerkorps during the Cold War. And one of his tasks during the Cold War was actually to see if he could infiltrate Stevnsfortet. So he was a Danish soldier, and he needed to see if there was any mistakes on the fort to infiltrate the fort. And he actually succeeded 3 times. And then, of course, he sent the report back, and then they blocked that entrance off. And then at the end of the day, he couldn't infiltrate. But he is now doing the volunteering checkpoint here.
Great. That's great. I mean, I'm glad I asked about the Costa Rica caving, because not only was it just a beautiful checkpoint, but all that history built in there. And that's stage 7, right? And then I see running, I see climbing, mountain bike orienteering, more climbing, vertical orienteering. Explain that to us.
Exactly. So this is a way, we don't have big cliffs, we don't have big mountains, but we have a lot of trees. And each tree is different. Like a checkpoint can be beautiful, or a stretch on a course could be beautiful, or it could be fun, a short stretch of mountain bike. It's technical, it's gnarly, it's fun. It's required some things, but actually climbing trees is also a skill in itself. The branches, the leaves, the structure of the tree is different from tree to tree. So you need a tack point, you need skills, how you want to tackle this tree to get up. And this is, of course, a tree that all kids know, but it's also a key and a task that we forget to climb in trees. So we have built this in as an orienteering map. We have taken a very detailed orienteering map, or here it's actually a satellite photo of an area. It's 1 to 700. So it's really detailed. And then we have actually marked trees. And then we have put a checkpoint on the ground without a punch. And then up high in the tree, we have put a checkpoint with a punch, or in this race, it's actually an electronic punch. So they climb up there and then they punch and then they come down. Then we have put up ropes in the tree. So the team navigate to the tree. They found a checkpoint in the ground. Then they put on their harness, tie themselves into the rope. One person is belaying the person that are climbing, and the other person are climbing up into the tree. He gets up to the top. He punches the checkpoint. He screams to his buddy, up high, tight, or whatever they do in the different languages. He pulled the rope tight. He sitting in his harness, and his buddy lower him back to the ground. They tie out of the rope, and then they run back to the next tree on the course. And this is actually also testing the team out in their efficiency, but also skill. You don't want to start climbing in a tree if the knot is not tied properly. You don't want to climb if the harness are loose and so on. So some of the best team that have tried this discipline, even though only 2 persons are climbing, the 2 others are helping, figuring the map for the next checkpoints or so on. So all 12 people are really busy all time. And it's really a time task. Also, sometimes you see some of the teams are screaming from below, see that big branch up there, go for there, or swing around the tree. You have branches on the backside and so on. So it's really like a special task that you haven't seen in a lot of races. I talked to Jason Magnus, that is my teammate. We always talk during races, and I told him like some years ago, you should build this in. And he actually built kind of similar stage in Oregon a couple of years ago, where it was not tree climbing, but it was slack climbing, rock climbing, and bouldering and stuff like that. But it's the same concept, and I really like this concept, and it's really challenging the team in all aspects.
You sent me the maps, and I'm going to go through now while we're talking here. I see a map, ABCD maze.
The maze is a different stage in a different part of the race, but there is also a maze.
And the maze is basically you're in a field, and you put sticks in the ground, and you use tape, and so on. So there's coasteering, there's caving, there's vertical orienteering, there's ropes.
Let's jump back to the maze a little bit, because often a team has 1 navigator. Most teams have 2 or 3 navigators, but very few teams have 4 navigators, or there's often a person that never looks at maps. But everybody can have a piece of paper and they can solve a maze in a magazine or so on. And therefore, we built a maze. So you don't need any map skill reading, or you don't need to know what is photography, what is green, what is blue, what is black, and all these kind of things that a map tells you, and you need to understand how to navigate. Everybody understands the maze, and everybody can slow down and use the exact same tools as we talked about before. Red, yellow, green. If you know where you are, if you know where you're going, you can move. You're green. If you're not sure where you're going, you should stop and figure out where you're going, and you have to solve the maze to figure out where you're going. And if you are lost in the maze, you should be red, either figuring out where you are or move back to the exact same point where you were. And with this maze, we can actually challenge all 4 team members to get this little sense of orienteering skills. And if a team finishes the race, all 4 members can tell out loud, I navigated some part of this race. I looked at the map, I figured it out, and I succeeded. If we Sunday morning still have a couple of people inside the maze, they failed. They couldn't figure it out. But if they are at the finish line or outside the maze, they succeeded. And this map or maze actually challenged and put in a totally different navigation challenge, both for the navigators and also for all the non-navigators inside the team. And of course, if we put on a European Championship, we needed the maze, and we needed the maze to be bigger than in the past. And it's going to be placed in a public park in a big town of Denmark. And there is a rock festival going on at the same time. There's a food festival going on. So there will be a lot of spectators in this park. They are not allowed to go into the maze, but they're allowed to spectate it. And they're allowed to see a little glimpse of what adventure race is, or they will see what athletes moving through. Because to be honest, Brian, seeing a checkpoint in the middle of a depression in a forest for spectators, it's not exciting, to be honest. It's a depression and it's in the middle of a forest. If you navigate from A to B, it's exciting. When you fight it, you get that you get that little dopamine kick as you find it. But for a spectator, this is totally irrelevant. But having a maze in a public park where there's a lot of spectators is a unique spectators thing, and everybody can understand what's going on. Back to the race that we did against each other, Endless Mountains. One of my favorite stages in this race was actually the cliff jump or the swimming stage. I can't remember what they called it.
Yep.
It was in an old quarry. It was a place where a lot of locals went for swimming. Exactly back to the point, it's a place where people would go on a holiday. It's a place people would go on a Sunday where they have a weekend or so, and they will enjoy themselves. They will do a little bit cliff jumping, they will swim around, and they will enjoy the sun and enjoy this beautiful place. We happened to do it during a race. And this was actually, for our team or for myself, one of the highlights in the race. We did the cliff jumps. It was kind of fun. It challenged us. And there was a lot of spectators, and we heard conversation. Wow, this is athletes coming from the World Series. And they actually, all of them enjoyed. I saw teenagers laying down their phones and start watching and paying attention. I saw people taking photos. I saw people chatting about, oh, these have been out, now they're here, they have to do this. And actually putting in spectators in our sport is an amazing point of view. It's so far out and it's not friendly, it's not friendly for the public. But if we can put in stages that is actually interesting for the spectators, why not? Let's do it. Let's encourage all race directors to put in at least one stage that is a spectator stage where local people can meet up and follow the race.
Yeah.
And back to Endless, this stage ended with a Ben & Jerry ice cream.
Yep.
What better way to celebrate American culture than to have a Ben & Jerry's?
Right.
Everybody knows it, but tasting it on home ground or home turf of USA, why not? We have to do it. This is a symbol of your culture. If we are a visitor, we want to taste your culture. We want to feel your culture. We want to see how you're doing on a Sunday. I saw locals lying and enjoying the sun and eating a Ben & Jerry's. Why not do it in a race? And that's the same. We also have local Danish ice cream that we would eat on a Sunday and give that to the spectators and give it to the racers.
We had a great summer here with the World Cup. It was a huge success for us. And we were watching the World Cup at home. We were following along. And I was telling my friends who are not adventure racers that they're getting a sense of what it's like to be an adventure racer, because we go to these races and so many different cultures and nationalities intersect, and how there's a sense of joy, and those artificial barriers of country and allegiance and loyalty fall apart, and we're all in it together, right? And so I think as you talk about the Ben and Jerry's at the Dorset Quarry with the jumps that we did, and the fact that the Danish ice cream is going to be there, the fact that you have the maze in a public park, is that you speak to the larger idea that in a world that can't help but be a conflict with itself, that when people get together, they love, respect, and enjoy each other's company. Do I capture your thought correctly?
Exactly. And also, this, as I said, it's a race and it has to be a competition. Mm-hmm. But let's not forget, this is also active vacation. When you have vacation, you want to enjoy yourself. Of course, there should be a little bit of suffering. There should be a little bit of challenging. There should be a little bit out of body comfort. Mm-hmm. So you can enjoy it in the end. But at the end of the day, this is a vacation for people. And there are 10, 20, maybe 25 teams racing to win this race. But we also have 25 teams which goal is to finish the race. And to their point, they also need to be challenged. They also need to get the finish line easy, but they also need to make it doable. Right. I want the race to be doable for all participants, and all participants should look at themselves in the eye and say, we did it. We had some struggles, but we overcome them. And at the end of the day, we won against the race.
You make a valid point too. There's something to be said for adventure racing that is very democratic in nature. And I mean by that is that when that race starts, right? So you and I are really good examples, right? We're at Endless Mountains, Team Dark Zone Podcast Naira, your team, Ben Racing 4 Hour Fuel, are handed the same set of maps and are presented with the same course. And at that point in time, we are the same going into that race. And now, obviously, during the course of the race, you won the race. We came in 19th, but we both had an equal opportunity to get as much of the race course as we could. There was no artificial barriers where we were given less access to the course. It was up to us to get there or not. And I think that speaks to the culture behind the sport that we talk a lot about, that everybody has a fair shot to do as much as they can inside that race, that the only barrier you create is the barrier that your team creates.
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, we have the same experience and we are racing under the same conditions and so on. And also back to this point, I have made the race in the ARWS. I have been a referee over the years, and each race always have a different ranking system. And just to figure out how the teams are ranked, I sometimes a PhD degree. So over the years, I've come in with inputs to the rules and so on, and tried to make it simple. So there are 4 different ways that a race can be ranked in the ARWS. Of course, you can invent a 5th or 6th, but to make it simple, there are 4 different ways. One that we picked is the rule C: most mandatory checkpoints, then most optional checkpoints, and then fastest time. There are 3 other rules that you can rank a race in. And if you are curious, you can go into the ARWS rules and read them. But we choose this ranking system because I think it really works well. All the mandatory checkpoints are the exciting. It's the red line at Stevnsfortet where they will see this iconic checkpoints. It's one you don't want to miss. Mm-hmm. There are other really technical mountain bike trails that are so fun that I don't want to miss them. Then there is also some really beautiful viewpoints that are like really interesting part of the race that you don't want to miss. Then there are some extra mountain biking, some extra running that people could do and challenge themselves, but the race will be the same if you miss them or not. those are the optional checkpoints. So it will just be more of the same. It's nice and it's good, but it's just more of the same. So I also, in that sense, guide people to get the most exciting part of the race by doing all the mandatory checkpoints. And if they have time, skill, and speed, they can also take the optional ones. And of course, the winning team can make all mandatory, optional, and get to the finish line within the 36-hour time, within the finishing time.
And that's who wins the race.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful. We're getting close to we've passed over an hour on this, and I want to be respectful towards your time. Big race, a lot to talk about. Hopefully, I honored your effort here by asking you good, thoughtful questions about the race. But what did I leave out? What about the race do you want to highlight? What about the experience you want to highlight? You've been very thoughtful and you're very clear in what you want to accomplish. But something of this scope, I would hate to end our conversation without you making certain you fully talk about the course.
I want to answer your question, but I just want to jump back one time. And one thing that I often see in a lot of adventure races, the race director have planned a course and he lost the entire course and he don't want to miss anything out because every part of the course is blood, tears, and sweat, and his passion to go into it. So it's often that you predict what time teams would race this course on. And it would be very different if certainly Safat or the old Oriya would sign up and start to race. They are, to all the respect of Masanka Racing, that is the Danish favorite, they're a little bit faster, they're a little bit more skilled, so they will clear the course maybe a little bit faster. So it's sometimes difficult for a race director to predict the winning time because there is the certainty or the unpredictable who will sign up, and also the weather. So if it's raining all 26 hours, which I don't hope it will, teams are traveling more slowly. So therefore, I build in that I can adjust the course. Even though I love every single checkpoint and I love every team to do the entire course, if I can see a team is behind my schedule, I will adjust the course so I take out some checkpoints. They will get the notification in a TA, in a written format that they need to sign. Example, that they need to skip 100, 101, 102, and checkpoint 103. And therefore, they will clear the course a little bit faster. And therefore, they will respect the winning time a little bit faster. Because the fastest and winning time will have time to be slower than the predicted time. But especially the back of the pack teams that are really racing cutoff, they will have big problems to clear the course. And they are actually planning the race without from the winning time. The winning time is 36 hours and the maximum time is 48. So they have 12 hours to spare. And if the winning time is longer, then I said the back of the pack strategy will totally collapse. And that is an unpredictable variable that they can't predict in the start. And that's also a variable I can't predict. Even though I have tested the entire course, I've done courses for 18 years. I'm pretty good at predicting, but the weather on the day, the teams that signs up, or other factors that is hard to predict. Also, if there is 3 teams that are racing really neck and neck, they are often racing faster. If the fastest team have a big lead in 1-2 hours, even though I don't tell them, they will figure out in transitions or loop stages and so on, they will figure out that they have a big lead. They will slow down, Brian.
Yep.
Even though they don't want to admit it, they will slow a little bit down. And those factors is impossible for me to predict. So therefore, I really need to adjust the course, even though I want them to see the entire course, but I need to kill my darlings. I need to skip some of the checkpoints along the way. And I already made a plan that if they check into a certain checkpoint at this time, the race will go on as planned. if they check in at this check time, I will skip this and this checkpoint. If they check in here, I will skip this entire section and so on. I will, of course, make this plan closely together with a referee and very skilled racer himself, Petri Forsman from Finland. He was the first winner of Adventure Race World Championship in Switzerland, 2001. He have raced all over the world. He's a really skilled organizer and really skilled racer himself. Him, together with a lot of other Danish organizers, have given me feedback, have challenged me on the course, giving me feedback, challenge, have you thought about this? I think we need to change this and this on. Have you made a good strategy for cutting checkpoints and so on? So Anders Andresen, that is one of the most skilled organizers in Denmark, have been involved. Peter Forsman, and one of the most skilled orienteering organizers. He was a part when the orienteering world championship was in Denmark. He has been a part of it to secure that the level and skill of the maps are top-notch and the orienteering is top-notch. So it's not only my effort, it's also me being ready to take feedback from other really skilled people and together with them develop this amazing course.
Yeah, and you're right about that. The idea that it's a group of people coming together who know the sport very well, who help design the course and put it together. I know that on the American side of things, USARA, the national body for us here, the association, works with race directors and will look at their maps and their rule book and their route book to really help them to planning. And the race directors have given really good feedback to USARA for doing that. And that's been a real benefit too, because I have a lot of sympathy for race directors because you pour your heart and your soul into the course. There's variables that day. There's faster teams, there's slower teams, there's weather. And sometimes course adjustments have to happen. And I can only imagine what that must feel like after spending all the time getting the permits and getting the people and lining everything up and realizing, yes, we got to cut that section. And that's tough. And but that's also the appeal of the sport. The fact that there's an unpredictable, sometimes chaotic nature to it makes it much more appealing than other sports that are much more easier to understand.
Yeah. And to your last point, this race would not happen without and hold your chair, 72 volunteers.
Yeah.
We have 72 volunteers for this race. And this was also a non-compromise thing. If we needed to pull these stages off, this amount of TAs, we needed this amount of volunteers. And sometimes when you have a race, you have too few volunteers and you pull it off, but it takes a really big toll on the volunteers. And at the end of the day, it's sometimes unsafe to let the volunteers drive around with that little of a sleep. So we also have built in a sleep card for volunteers that they at least every day need 4 to 5 to 6 hours sleep, depending on age, depending on their experience, stay to be volunteers. So the volunteers have the sleep card as well. Good. That they need to punch in and punch out. But 72 volunteers for this race to be pulled off.
Wonderful. What a great effort. So much going into it. Give me the final word, Lars. Let me let you go. Wrap it up.
So welcome to the European Championship kicking off in 12 hours. People will board the buses and be driven to the start. And from the get-go, they will experience Danish history dating all the way back to the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Viking Age, all the way back actually to the dinosaurs. And along the way, they will be introduced to Danish culture, Danish cuisines, taste Denmark, smell Denmark, and they will get Denmark under their skin. And all this within 36 hours and maximum 48 hours. A social aspect in the beginning. And when they get to the finish line, they will have a finish buffet and they can sleep at the hotel. And when they wake up, we have this massive, amazing breakfast. And all the team is going to gather again for a social breakfast. And afterwards, they will head off to the award ceremony. And then they will head home.
Great, Lars. Thanks for being on the show. Good luck with the race. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Brian.
That was a bit of a tough end at the end when Lars was telling us all about the social breakfast. Sorry about that sharp end of his conversation. He was not cut off. That was just where the editing left it. So, Lars, thanks for coming on the show. Enjoy that social breakfast. All right, folks, there you have it. Episode 170 of The Dark Zone. Thank you to Lars for coming on to the show and for outlining that wonderful bear of a course that he has put together. I'm excited to follow along and see how teams do with all of those challenges. Thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for being here. I am delighted that you have decided to spend your time and to join The Dark Zone. If you like what you hear on the podcast, please leave a review and click and all that sort of stuff. The algorithm likes that. And remember, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.